In London the other day, Richard Dawkins and I and Anthony Grayling, moral philosopher.
Wow, that's the A-team.
Not bad. Debated against three religious types, Roger Scruton, Rabbi Neuberger, and someone else, can't remember now.
Yeah.
A person who'd actually written a book with the title Digging Up Jesus, or Digging for Jesus. Very funny. We massacred them, by the way, but that's not the point. We left them for dead.
Christopher Hitchens is a man of strong opinions.
I don't love my enemies. That's why I think Christianity is immoral.
His subjects have ranged from Iraq to Thomas Jefferson to Mother Teresa.
Millions of secular people thought Mother Teresa was a saintly woman, instead of the douchebag and liar and thief that she was.
His latest best-selling book addresses one of the most famous cultural figures of all time, God.
The beauty of science hugely outranks the charms of superstition.
Are you not just a little bit scared of this, imagine that completely rational world?
The idea of living in a world that had too much hyper-rational is not enough of a threat. In some areas, they think they better show up because otherwise I'll be the only atheist there. And everyone who thinks that turns up, and this is hundreds of people. And they say, oh, I'm not the only one. I've been doing this for whatever it is, more than 30 years. I mean, if there was a persuasive argument, either for the existence of God or his intervention in human affairs, benign intervention, I honestly do think I would know of it by now. I would have heard it. I've had to confront it. These people are nothing like as confident as they look, and nothing like it. You ask them what they think, you get a different opinion with each person. They have no dogma, no uniform monolithic at all. Same with the Catholics, increasingly. You say, well, so you believe virgin birth? Well, no, not really. It's it's like the life of Brian.
Right. So one by one, they just get
it's a la carte. It's a la carte. It's very much like the life of Brian, which I still think is the funniest and maybe cleverest film ever made. Blessed are the cheesemakers? Well, no, it's not supposed to take it literally. I mean, it's a reference to anyone in the dairy industry. It is. That's true. That's what they're like.
Yeah, and the Palestinian Liberation Front is very prophetic
Judea.
as well. Yeah,
no,
People's Front of Judea.
People's Front of Judea. And the Judea People's Front. Splitters!
Yeah.
What have the Romans ever done for us? Well...
Yeah, they were right about a lot of things.
It's in the interest, you see, of a lot of liberals, especially in the Northeast, who are slightly snobbish, to be frank about it, to believe that there is this huge fascistic force in the rest of the country, because it enables them to write to all the Jews in New York asking to give them all their money to the Democratic Party. And it always works. You always terrify the Jews with this. It's a racket also, actually, I think that, frankly, I do. When the Democratic National Committee runs out of fundraising schemes, they write to the Jews again and says, if we lose, the Christian right will take over the country, which it will not. It cannot do that.
It can't do that?
It's impossible. You could not govern. The great thing about the United States is no one group is strong enough to dominate it.
But we've been...
Certainly not this crowd. And the last time they did, they never recovered from their victories, which were prohibition and banning Darwin in the schools in Tennessee. They had two great victories in the 20s. They have never recovered from their success. I think dialectically, you see.
Right.
That's the advantage I have over non-dialectical people.
So how did this come to be the received wisdom in the last 3 or 4 years that they are
running? It's a liberal dogma, and it's also, I'm afraid, it's something that, in my experience, it's something for people to say when you say, look, we are in a fight with religion, we better get used to it. Secular values need to be defended. We are being attacked by a theocratic, fascistic, fanatical movement. A lot of people who don't fight on that would rather not have it. Buy some time by saying, well, yeah, okay, but if you're against theocracy, surely Bush is a theocrat too. Oh, come on, it's me you're talking to. Yeah, please. But they do. For them, it sort of postpones the evil hour when they might have to make up their mind. So that's another factor. And then, these people are a huge pain in the ass. But they're laughable. They're laughable, really. I mean, Falwell and Robertson were media clowns.
There's a point there that there is a theological motivation to both sides in this big
Well, yeah, there is. There could be. There could be.
War that we're in.
If the secularists say that's true and say that they're neutral, then it will be true. I think the secularists should take the side of the United States freely, openly, clearly, and say that the distinctions are much, much, much larger than the similarities. People are just generally fed up with being lectured by clerical bullies, and I've had enough of it. They don't like it when the president says, "God bless America." You don't have to say that at the end of the speech. Just shut up. Finish the speech and shut up. We don't like it. Why are you doing this? They don't like the settlers on the West Bank trying to bring on the Messiah with our money. They don't like any of this. I mean, they used to think they have a quiet life and just live freely on the benefits of the First Amendment Constitution. They're not. In the Enlightenment, they can't do it now. They have to fight for it. Good.
How are you ever gonna be able to replace that feeling of comfort that people are
You can't.
able to take?
You can't, but you can keep it. You can make them have it privately. You can arrange it so that they say, "All right, I'll believe it, and I teach it to my children, but not in the school my kids go to. You can't do that. It's in the home. I pity the children who grow up in these homes. I can't stop that. Keep it yourself. We have no quarrel. You try and teach it to my kids. It's not a difference of opinion. It's a fight. I would not let you do that."
Are you not just a little bit scared of this? Imagine that completely rational world.
Well, I think that's a very small danger.
Right.
I would cross that bridge when I came to it, or double cross that bridge when I came to it. I think the idea of living in a world that had too much hyper-rational is not enough of a threat.
That's fair enough.
But no, I do know what you mean, and I say in the book that there has to be an answer to the worry, let's call it, that people have about there being sort of nothing transcendent, nothing numinous or awe-inspiring. But we have already answers to this. Maybe we should stress them more. I mean, I do anyway. Literature is a better source of ethics than religion. The beauty of science hugely outranks the charms of superstition, pseudo-miraculous. The real nature is miraculous enough. The beauty of reason isn't nothing. Consolations of philosophy are not zero.
Doesn't there just need to be a place for mystery as well in there?
Yeah, as long as no one says they know that it isn't a mystery, they have the answer. But people who say they do are out of the argument, because they're claiming to know something that by definition they can't know. I don't do that. I don't say I can definitely disprove your God. I can say it seems like on all the evidence a junk hypothesis, but I cannot absolutely negate it. But you say not just there is a God, but you know what he wants. And you know his mind. Well, I know you know. I know you can't know that. It's not a matter of how clever you are or educated. You can't know it. Why do you claim to? Because you think it might give you the right to tell me what to do. Well, that. The great Sigmund had an excellent point. He said, well, if you examine religion, however sympathetically or unsympathetically, you're forced to notice the strong connection between the wish and the thought. The element of wish thinking is unbanishable from religion, mainly because we're the only species that definitely knows that one by one we're going to die. To give someone the suggestion that maybe an exception could be made in their own case is making a fairly obvious offer. The commonest objection I get when I go to debate the faithful here is that, so well, don't you know all the great work that Christians are doing in Africa? I said, well, I do. But I know of a lot of people who do the same kind of work without any religious motivation. You're not proving anything about your faith by doing this. Is this the most you'll say for yourself, that you're a charity? Because I'm not against philanthropy. I am against missionary work. And I'm against offering people bandages in exchange for coming to a Bible class. I think that's actually rather horrible. But they don't always even do that. They're very insipid. They'll say, but I know some good Christians who run a school for retarded children. I sure. Right. But that's what Hamas says, and Hezbollah.
And
they both say, and it's true of them too. We
take care of
the poorest. Right. If the doctor doesn't come to your bit of the ghetto, we'll find you a doctor, or we'll get you to a hospital. We will. The Red Crescent will come. We'll make them do it. And we'll rebuild your house and we'll feed your children. Yes, of course. With that, when they do it, the pitch is obvious.
Yeah.
Okay? It's fundamentalists buying support from
Slightly cleaner proposition.
frightened, poor, diseased, illiterate people on the pretext of compassion. We say, well, who can't see through that? That's a man-made political movement.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mother Teresa, who promised to try and evangelize India so that the people there would stop using contraceptives. That was what she said she wanted to do.
The overlap between religion and politics, just keeps coming up over and over again.
Yes.
And the book is fairly clear of politics. I mean, but you are not.
Not as much as I'd like to be. No. I don't have any political allegiances anymore. I'm not a member of any party, for example.
But your opinions are fairly well known.
Yeah. Well, if you say so.
I think.
If you say so, then they are.
I think so.
So, thank you.
So, but when I was reading the book, I was thinking, every chapter is steering clear of politics, largely. I mean, it's, you can draw your own conclusions
It's
from
an
time to
argument
time.
it's an argument with faith only.
Yeah. But even in this conversation, we found ourselves, dipping into it.
Well, that's because I think religion has become an optional belief, see, because of the availability of better and clearer and more beautiful explanations for things. Someone can go on being a believer if they like, but it's purely optional. You can be a physicist and go to maths, but you can't say your physics is what takes you there. You can't. You can't derive it from that. It's optional. Some people are that way. Isaac Newton was an alchemist, spiritualist. Joseph Priestley, who discovered oxygen, believed in the phlogiston theory. He was Unitarian. I don't care. Fine by me. As long as he doesn't try and make me be one.
Right.
But unfortunately, innate in religion is the belief that it can't be kept private, that it ought to come out and try and change the laws for everyone else. And the danger is not always the same every time and in every country, but it's always there. My analogy is, my favorite one, is Albert Camus, La Peste, the plague, remember? At the end of the novel, the rats have gone back into the sewers and the city is healthy again and the nightmare is over, but it ends by saying, but still the rats were down in the bacilli in the sewers, and one day they will emerge again and send the rats up to die in a free city. They're always there, always there waiting.
But you do see things. You see things in quite extreme terms. I mean, I don't hear you ever being attracted to any moderate views. I mean, you see these things. You see them as big ideological battles.
I think at the moment there's a very, very radical confrontation between what I would call civilization and faith. Yes, and the stakes are extremely high. I mean, some of the worst bigots in the world, in Iran, worst fanatics in the world, are about to get their mitts on a nuclear weapon. I take that very seriously. I don't think we should necessarily be hysterical about it, but it's an extremely unsettling thought, because the next government of Iran could be a lot worse than the present one is. And we would have no control over it because it's a dictatorship. The same is true of the Jewish nutbags in the Palestinian territories who hope that by doing this they'll bring on the Messiah and Armageddon. Supported in this by the Christian right in the United States, which, although it's overrated as a force, is still much too strong for comfort.
So is this a recent phenomenon or just a more
Well,
visible?
I think it's become, there's something worse that is new, which is the willingness of secular liberals to capitulate to theocratic intimidation, especially if it's Muslim, because they feel, I think it's because they have a bad conscience about the third world.
Because they believe in pluralism?
It's partly because of a soft form of multiculturalism, and it's partly because, annoyingly to me, at any rate, the Muslims have managed to persuade a lot of people that Islam is in some way a religion of the oppressed third world. Right? Even though Al-Qaeda started to make war on India long before the United States, and India is the most important secular, though predominantly Hindu, democracy in the world. That's the country they started to attack first. They really hate the Hindus. They really like to destroy India by wrenching Kashmir. very serious. If they start a civil war in India, it would be a complete disaster, not just for Asia. No one in the American press would reprint the cartoons from Copenhagen, where individual Danes around the world are being targeted for murder. The Danish economy and democracy was being sabotaged and boycotted. Danish embassies being burned. Everyone stood by and said, well, let's not get too involved because we don't want to offend anybody. No one would reprint the cartoons. This is in a picture-dominated media, where the whole issue was the images. That we're not going to show you what the images are, for fear of giving offence, and also just out of fear.
Right.
And a little magazine that I write for, called Free Inquiry, an atheist magazine, published out of New Hampshire, which did print them, was told by Borders Books, you can't sell that in our chain.
Because they're scared of a bomb going off.
That might be what they said.
It strikes me that the other side of this debate has built-in support groups. I mean, people are meeting, going to church, going to synagogue, going to temple, going to the mosque all the time.
Yes.
But there's no support group on this side.
Well, that's our strength, that we don't need support groups. Precisely our strength. If I meet someone in Georgia or Manila or Calcutta who thinks like me, it takes a few minutes of conversation and society before we understand each other. I mean, of course, we know. There are millions of us all over the world. It's an easy handshake of recognition. We don't think, okay, now what we better do is go every 7 days or twice a day to shout and holler, just to reassure ourselves we still believe it. We don't need that. It can be believed without strain.
It's true.
Without effort, without fanaticism. It's an understanding. It's based on reason and literature and, to some extent, irony, the imperishable, necessary X factor quality.
Humor. I mean, that's in your
book. And a little humor and culture. And usually some shared experience. Fine, we don't need to reaffirm it all the time. It's a sign of the weakness of religion that it keeps on needing to pump people up at mass rallies of one kind or another. That it needs constant reinforcement. Of course it needs that. It would crumble without it.
Right. Have you ever had any phenomenon where you felt like the wind got behind you like it is at the moment? Have you had these moments where everything seems to be...
No.
Coming together?
No, especially not having announced, a month ago, I said to people, I think that there's something in the zeitgeist now, it's the perfect moment, and everything now seems to confirm it. No, never. There's usually been entirely the opposite, it's very much against the grain.
Well, you're
millions of people think Henry Kissinger is a great statesman, a great intellectual. I know better, but you've got all your work to do. It's like breaking rocks.
Well, what are you going to do?
Millions of secular people thought Mother Teresa was a saintly woman, instead of the douchebag and liar and thief that she actually was. The wind is in your face all the time, never behind you. Now I feel sort of borne aloft.
Right, but you're never going to quite feel like you're on the side of conformity.
Actually, one week I did feel this, only because in the same week the Princess Diana had checked out. And I was saying, this is an absurd fuss everyone's making. And because I was the only person prepared to say so on TV, I was invited on. I was wearing makeup practically all week, feeling a fool in Washington, but it was fun, pushing back at this terrible sob fest. And then Mother Teresa died the same week, and I thought, oh, well, there is a God. Because there's only one person in the world who's written a book pissing on her, and they have to have me on again.
Right.
I was never off TV all week. It was preposterous, but I got some licks in. I didn't just have to shout back at the box all the time, watching the celebration of frauds, which is mainly what happens the rest of the year.
You shouldn't seem so delighted about that. It's very bad for them.
Well, I like it when bad people die. I don't love my enemies. That's why I think Christianity is immoral. Go love your own enemies, don't be loving mine.
So, Orwell. I mean, you're a fan, right?
Yes. How shall I improve on that answer? Well, I think in the following way. Some of my enemies and some of my friends have said either that Hitchens has or wants to be given the mantle of Orwell, and can I just take another in this series of dozens of opportunities to do it? Not so. A, do not seek, have never, wouldn't dare, and B, surely do not deserve. So even those who think so are wrong, and those who sneer at me saying that's what I'd like are wrong too. But I would say that when I discovered his novels, actually, not his political ones, social ones, Keep the Aspen flying. Clergyman's Daughter. Coming Up for Air.
Coming Up for Air is hilarious.
Wonderful. When I was about, I should think 14 or 15, it did confirm me that I was already coming to, that my life would be meaningless if I didn't become a writer. That it wasn't that I wanted to be, it was that it was a compulsion, so I had to do it. It chose me rather than I chose it, if that doesn't sound preposterous.
You're not the only person to ever say that.
Some people watching this would know from their experience what I meant. They wouldn't think it was as weird as it sounds.
Right.
A vocation, if you want. And yes, I remember thinking, I wish I had known this guy. When I read him, it's as if I'm being personally addressed. He seems to have this transparent prose that communicates itself. It's partly because of intellectual honesty, but partly because of a certain intuition into the hidden injuries of the class system, for example. He wrote about families who are very like my own lower middle class English background. And I thought, I didn't think novels were written about people like us. And I sure didn't realize that he saw exactly what tensions and worries are. And I was very impressed by that. That was before I read Animal Farm in 1984, which I think they would have made me do at school. And I've since read, well, everything he's ever written, several times. The point was made better by Lionel Trilling. So the remarkable thing about Orwell, and the encouraging thing, is that he's not a genius. He lived only 46 years. He never went to university. He never had a steady job. He usually didn't have a steady publisher, but he will never be forgotten because he managed to disprove imperialism, Stalinism, and fascism in one lifetime, and make some imperishable raids on its territory that no one's ever going to forget. All of the time ill, all of the time poor. It shows how much difference a person of really average integrity and intelligence and education can make if they have a little courage and a little intellectual honesty. And of course there are the shortcomings of the individual you can see in him too. But he basically won his own battle against his own prejudices. It's an example for all time. It's not, you don't get the sense you do when reading Proust or Nabokov or George Eliot that you shouldn't be in the writing business. All the people who've ever said in history, alas, there was nothing I could do, are lying, or at least are discrediting themselves. They could have, they just chose not to.
That's another version of everyone has a book in them.
Well, everyone does have a book in them, but in most cases that's where it should stay.
You're a reviewer as well
Yes.
as a writer. So does that, how does that impact your work as an author, or does it not?
Being not full-time, but I mean half of my life is being a book critic, has had certainly one salutary effect on me as a writer. It means I don't bother with the reviews anymore of my own work. It's been about 5 years. I think the Kissinger book was the last time. When a good review would make my day or a bad one would get me down. I just don't. I know how the game is played too well. And maybe this would have happened to me anyway, because I have a fairly thick skin to begin with and a fairly broad back. But I have sometimes been very cheered up by a nice review, even very recently. But I'm no longer cast down by a bad one. Once or twice I read a review, I think, well, my mother could have written that. And once I read a review by a man you may know called James Wood, who I think is by far the best critic now writing in English. He's a young guy. He's the critic for the New Republic. He teaches at Harvard. Extraordinary fellow. He reviewed a book of mine a few years ago, and the wonder of reading this review was this extraordinary sense someone had really read the book, taken trouble with it, and could tell the reader what the point of it was. And that he liked it, and was nice about it, was quite beside the point to me, because he'd done the essential stuff. I've always tried to learn from that. Anyone who reads me on them, I hope would agree that I had at least done that. And the other day, I would give this to my students as an example of the difference between a reviewer and a critic. Both James and I reviewed John Updike's new novel, Terrorist. And it's one of the worst novels.
I think I read your review.
One of the worst novels I think ever written by anybody. And I gave it a bit of a pasting in the Atlantic. I had maybe 1,800 words to do it. And I was a bit polemical, I have to say. I compared it to better novels by Updike to show that I think he's in decline. Then I read James Wood's 5,000 magisterial words on the same book in the New Republic, and I thought, oh, for heaven's sake, why do I bother? You know, I could show this, I will, to my class. Say, this is a review by C. Hitchens. This is a piece of criticism by James Wood, showing all the literary faults and false quantities and impostures and weaknesses of structure and plot that the Waptak had. It was absolutely wonderful.
You're not trying to make the reader feel something at a particular moment. You're trying to get closer to the truth.
Well, I hope the two ambitions would be the same. That you are trying to force the reader to pay attention to something that you believe is important. And I know I know from my email and my mailbag that I sometimes succeed in doing that. People say, I hadn't thought of it like that before. Well, then I feel very happy. I couldn't try it in a fictional form. I couldn't move people that way, no. But I can make people, I can make them laugh, and I can, if not make them cry, at least make them, you know.
You certainly made a lot of people think.
Well, you say that, then that's enough for me.